Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the new Platoon Command Squad and doing an in-depth review of this unit. So the new Platoon Command Squad is available in the 9th edition Astra Militarum Codex, or Imperial Guard if you're a long beard like me, and it is an HQ choice and a good source of orders for your army. So the Platoon Command Squad is an HQ choice in the 9th edition Astra Militarum Codex, or if you like me, Imperial Guard Codex. You longbeards out there, make yourself known down in the comment section below. So the command squad consists of 5 models. You've got 4 veterans and a platoon commander. Each one of the veterans is kind of like a guardsman, except for they have an extra attack. Now, if you're coming into this from the old 8th edition Codex, you've got to be aware that veterans now do not have ballistic skill 3+. They have ballistic skill 4+. So the difference is that they've lost that ballistic skill point, but they have gained an extra attack. The platoon commander actually has a fairly decent stat line. He's got ballistic skill and weapon skill of 3+, strength 3 and toughness 3, which is a little bit weak, but he does make up with it by the fact that he's got 3 attacks and he's got 4 wounds. On top of that, he's got a 5+ armor save, which is so-so, but he also has a 5+ invulnerable save, which is actually pretty good considering this is kind of a junior character. In addition to these 5 models, you can actually add on a whole bunch of advisors to the squad as well, and you don't need to pick which advisor. You can add on as many as you want. So you could add on an officer of the fleet, a astropath, a master of ordnance, and an Ogren bodyguard to make a big 9-man squad if you want to. Now, the really important thing to remember with the command squad is that it's got an incredible amount of flexibility. Right down from the veterans to the officer to all those advisors, you can really tailor this unit to fulfill a specific battlefield role. Now, you can keep your command squad as a cheap support unit. It can just be made up of the officer, the 4 veterans, maybe you'll chuck some of the free upgrades in there, like a flag, a medic, and a voxcaster, and it could be a decent HQ choice that can help support and buff the units around it. Or you can start layering on these different advisors and make it into quite a monstrosity of a unit that can almost do anything it needs to on the battlefield. It can do a little bit of shooting, it can call in lots of stratagems, and it can even have a little bit of a Barney in combat if it needs to. One thing you've got to be careful of with a command squad is not overspending. It can be really easy to get carried away, start giving one of the veterans a power fist, give the officer a power fist and a plasma pistol, start chucking in every advisor, including the Ogren bodyguard. You can then start spending loads of CP on it, giving it multiple relics. There's loads that you can spend, both points and command points, on this unit. But remember that if you end up spending a lot of points on this one squad, you might not have as many points and command points to spend elsewhere, and you might need them. So just be careful when you come to building your command squad. And really, my advice would be, if you're going to go anything above the standard little 5-man line support unit, really have a game plan for what you want this unit to do. Now, we've talked briefly about flexibility and loadouts, but let's just dive into that just a little bit more. So each one of the veterans can take a special weapon. This is a platoon command squad, which means you can take both heavy weapons and special weapons in this unit. So you can take a 2-man veteran team with a heavy bolter, and then you can have 2 other veterans, and each one of those guys can have a special weapon. Special weapons you can pick from are the standard affair for guard. You've got your plasma guns, you've got your melters, your snipers, your grenade launchers, and your flamers. And likewise, you can swap the heavy bolter team out for a lascannon team, missile launch team, mortar team, so on and so forth. So you can actually load this thing up with quite a lot of weapons. Now, that's actually quite a lot of firepower in a small squad. And when you think about it, if your command squad is really just going to be sort of babysitting some backline artillery units, maybe some mortars that he's going to be ordering around, then do you really need to start putting things like the regimental standard in there, the voxcaster, the medic? Actually, you might be better off instead having a plasma gun and a sniper rifle and a las cannon in that unit. And because they've all got the character keyword, they can just shoot away at the enemy, plinking away, and the enemy can't engage them back, thanks to Lookout Sir. So that is one way that you could run your command squad. However, I feel like a lot of people are going to go down the route of having a 5-man unit, and it's most likely going to have a regimental standard, because the effect of the regimental standard is that all core units within 6 inches get to reroll 1s to wound, and that's very nice. We'll be looking at the Castellan, which is a separate unit, in more detail in another video, but between the command squad with regimental standard and the Castellan, all core units can start getting reroll 1s to hit and reroll 1s to wound. So this command squad pairs well with some of your other HQ choices. On top of that, you're more than likely going to want to take the Voxcaster. For me, the Regimental Standard and the Voxcaster are probably your two go-to standard upgrades for the command squad. They're free, and the big advantage of the Master Vox is it allows your officer to issue orders within a 24-inch range to other units that have a Voxcaster, and pretty much all your units are going to have Voxcasters these days. And the big advantage of that Voxcaster is it means your officer doesn't need to be on the front lines where he may end up getting picked up or sniped at by some sort of spell or weapon that the enemy has, or some cheeky combat unit that jumps over the top of your men. It means he can sit back 24 inches, hand out his orders, and have a great time. Another big advantage of the Master Vox is, remember, orders done in the command phase now. So if you have your men move away, then it means that your command squad might not be in a position to do a second order in the following turn. So that's why I think the Master Vox and the Regimental Standard are two really good upgrades. The Medic is quite nice. It does give the squad a 5+ feel no pain, and if you're not really intending on having your squad do a lot of damage output, I definitely stick the Medic in there. The durability buff is very nice. Don't forget, accumulatively, this squad has 8 wounds base. If you start slapping in things like Ogre and Bodyguards and some of those advisors, you are going to get even more mileage out of that Medic. Now, if you've given your command squad a flag and a medic and a Master Vox, and you're going to have one veteran left over, and really, you can give him whatever you want. You could give him that Power Fist or a Power Sword if you wanted to just have a little cool little Master Sergeant running around, or most likely the sensible choice would be to give him a special weapon. My go-to would either be a Melter Gun or a Plasma Gun. Both of those are some of the better special weapons that you can get for your command squads. The Plasma Gun is probably the more sensible choice, but if you're an old Longbeard like me and you have fond memories of that original metal Cadian command squad, which was made up of a Melter Gun, a Medic, a Regimental Standard, a Master Vox, and an Officer, then that's probably the vibe you want to go with. So Melter Gun if you're feeling nostalgic but still want an effective weapon, Plasma Gun if you're trying to be as efficient as possible. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on the regimental advisors in this video. That's going to be in another video that'll be coming out later on. I'll briefly touch on them. The Officer of the Fleet helps buff your aircraft, the Massive Ordnance helps buff your artillery, and the Astropath is a low-level psyker who is actually quite good at supporting your units and can also gain you some command points. All of those characters do have their uses. The Officer of the Fleet and the Massive Ordnance give you access to some brilliant stratagems as well. So whilst they can be considered a little pricey, they are probably worth slapping on a command squad. The Ogre and Bodyguard is a pretty cool model, although he is very expensive, but he does massively boost the durability of your unit. If you're finding that your command squads are constantly getting picked up and you really wish that they could just be a bit more durable, then you may find that just slapping an Ogre and Bodyguard in there really makes a difference. The advantage of the Ogre and Bodyguard is the unit gets to use his toughness, which means suddenly the whole unit is now toughness 5, and the Bodyguard himself comes with a load of wounds and he reduces damage by 1. So he really is a bit of a luxury, but if you're finding in your personal meta, maybe you face a lot of jump armies that are getting around the back and shooting your squads up or charging them up, you may find that the Ogre and Bodyguard becomes pretty useful. Now, we've talked about the options and loadout for your command squads, but what does it actually do on the battlefield? What is its battlefield role? Well, fundamentally, it is a buffing and support unit. You're going to find this with a lot of your Guard HQ units. They are not combat heroes. They are not smash captains or anything like that. They can Barney in combat if they have to. If you really spec into it, you go for Ogre and Bodyguard, all the combat upgrades you can get, give each veteran a las pistol and chainsword, you can start getting a half decent combat unit, but it's going to be very expensive, and honestly, you're kind of speccing the unit into something that fundamentally is not its battlefield purpose. The main reason you want to take a command squad is the fact that it can do orders. Orders are a really important part of the Guard Codex. Now, again, I'm going to be going into orders in a deep dive in a separate video, but the platoon commander has access to regimental orders. These orders allow you to buff up the squads around the officer. For example, you can have squads get +1 to hit and +1 AP in shooting, or the same again, but in combat, you can actually have your squads do suppressive fire on the enemy, which means that your opponent will be -1 to hit when he's shooting back at you. You can tell your men to dig in, take light cover. They've already got light cover. They get light cover and -1 to hit. So there's loads of things that your command squad can do that directly buff the other units around them. So they are certainly a buffing and a support unit. Now you might be thinking, hang on, command squads can only do 1 order. Why wouldn't I take something like a Castellan? He's cheaper and he does 2 orders. Castellans are great, and to be honest, you're probably going to want them and command squads. But the Castellan has a key problem, which is that he can only do orders in his immediate area within 6 inches. The command squad with the Master Vox can do orders within a 24-inch radius, and that is not to be underestimated. It is a massive, massive selling point for the command squad. If you're running any kind of guard army, even a hybrid guard army or mechanized army, if you've got any kind of infantry, you're going to want access to a command squad for those orders. Another really important thing about that Voxcaster is it gives you access to some secondaries. So for example, right now I'm recording, Guard have access to a secondary objective called Inflexible Command. Normally, what that secondary means is you need to be within 6 inches of an officer with all of your infantry. That can be pretty difficult if you're running a big guard army, or if you've got disparate elements running around doing flanking attacks. Well, there is an exception. If your unit has a Voxcaster and it was within 24 inches of an officer with a Voxcaster, then you can still score Inflexible Command. You get 2 points a turn for that. Now that's really big. 24 inches means that a couple of command squads will cover pretty much all of your infantry across the board. So that is a really big advantage of command squads over some of those other officers who can do more orders. Another small point to note about the command squad is that it is actually surprisingly durable. It has 8 wounds. That is the same amount as the Lord Solar. And those wounds are spread out across multiple models, which means that if you get hit by like a damage 10 weapon, a regular veteran just eats it. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't spread over. So they are actually surprisingly durable. They've got a 5+ invulnerable save on the officer, and they can get a 5+ feel no pain or ignore wounds, whatever rule you want to call it, from that medic. So overall, even just a basic command squad with a medic in it is actually pretty durable. Command squads are also a great place for you to place your relics. For example, one of the best ones in the guard army, maybe even in all of 40k, is the relic standard. Not only does it give you that reroll 1s to wound aura of every regimental standard, but it also allows you to ignore all hit and wound modifiers on an enemy unit, and they can't use any feel no pains or wound caps either. And that affects all core units within 6 inches of the command squad. That is really, really big. So they're a great place to put relics. And you can also start stacking more relics into them and make them really durable. There's one that gives the whole unit a 4+ invulnerable save. There's another one that gives the whole unit a transhuman physiology equivalent. You've got a Master Voxcast that gives you infinite order range. There's just loads of things. So again, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning of the video, command squads are flexible. The problem is you kind of want to spend so much on them, you might end up spending too much on them. One small thing to note about the command squad, which I think might catch a few people out when they first start using it, is that it cannot be your warlord if there is a senior officer on the board. Basically, if there's a Castellan on the board, he has to be the warlord. If there's Creed or Strachan or the Lord Solar on the board, they have to be your warlord. There is a chain of command. So just be aware of that when you're building your army, because if you want your command squad officer to maybe have a warlord trait, you might need to spend a CP on officer cadre to get him an extra one. But overall, command squads are a very, very good unit. They are probably one of those units that you will include in nearly every single one of the guard armies you're going to be building. Having access to all those orders at such a great range with the relics, it's just great. So they get an 8 out of 10, Mordian approved. I am docking just a couple of points. One for the fact they can only do 1 order, and another point for the fact that they are kind of pricey. Even a base command squad is coming in at 75 points. That is very expensive in comparison to how much you used to pay in 8th edition, and even in comparison to some of the other HQ choices that you can get in the Guard Codex. A Castellan is only 45 points. Creed herself is only 75, 80 points. So they are very good, but they are a little pricey. And because of that, I've docked off a point. But overall, I would say that command squads are definitely going to be one of those units you're going to include in every single one of your army list. They are an A tier unit. I have been struggling to build lists that don't include a command squad. They're just that good. So, but that's all for today's video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you have a favorite command squad loadout and combination that you found already to be very effective? Let me know. Have you just got a really cool fluffy option like that classic metal Cadian loadout? Let me know down in that comment section below. If you've enjoyed today's video, then make sure you smash that like button like a big titty Eldar girlfriend. And if you want to make sure you never miss an episode and see more of these unit reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you really enjoyed today's video and you want to support the channel, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. By becoming a channel member or Patreon, you gain access to a whole host of perks, one of the biggest ones being access to the Mordian Glory Discord server. That is a community with over 600 active members, and there's always someone to talk to about memes, tactics, hobbying, painting, everything you could possibly think of. It is of course guard focused, but we've got loads of other players in there as well. So if that sounds like a whole bunch of fun to you, make sure you get involved in that Mordian Glory Discord and join the channel. And I just want to take a second now and say a big thank you to all of the latest channel members. So thank you to Grey Shirt Guy, Fuego Bacon, Nicholas, WW2 Destroyer, Harvey Hume, Jobo, Matthew Nope, John Buck, Dreas Est, Andrew Marlowe, Ishmael Minora, Maverick, Mostro Morty, Randy Lynette, Chet Chrisholm, Hulron, Ascended Raven, Michael R, Graham Mitchell, Chase Skinner, 40k Guy, Scott Carnes, Nate Rossi, Ian Cat, Coin Flip, Call German Dude, Robert Rogers, It's a Me Marco, Lacanthos, Daniel Ninover, Josh MC 2000, Bread, and Gimpy Buffalo. Thank you guys for becoming channel members. Thank you for doing your part. I also want to say a big thank you to the latest Patreon supporters as well. So thank you to Zhang Jerry, Tyler McKee, BC Crowther, Imperial Jake, Ryan Kelly, Freddie BD, Dubx298, Harrison Garland, Viper, and Nathan. Thank you guys for your ongoing Patreon support. And of course, last but certainly not least, I want to say a huge thank you to my top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters, the Lord Solars, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to supporting the channel. So a massive thank you to Bonbon Vert, Navy Veteran, Phil French, Ross Miller, Tekwal, Alex Dengal, John Stubbs, Nicholas Walsh, Swordfish Trombone, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and Sly Varney, the one-man super chatting army. Thank you guys for your very generous support. I know I say it every time, but it makes a massive difference. So thank you. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.